Hello, welcome back. And if it's your first time here, my name is Andrew Loren, and I do daily art uploads documenting my process and growth as an artist. I've noticed that on YouTube there's like a ton of channels that teach you how to draw, but not as many that think about like how to learn or how to practice. And so that's kind of the objective of what I'm doing here. If you've been following along, you notice that I actually didn't upload any videos in the last 2 days. And does this mean that I haven't been drawing? Did I take days off? Even though I say never take days off and draw every day. I might have taken one day off in this sequence, but for the most part, I didn't. The real reason I haven't uploaded any videos is because uploading content on the holidays like Christmas and the day after or the day before is kind of a waste because just in general, there's way less interaction with YouTube. So it's better just to hold the content and publish it a few days later. So there's some little content creator knowledge that I can pass along as well. So anyway, what I'm planning on doing is I'm actually going to upload. I normally don't upload on the weekends, but since I didn't upload on Monday and Tuesday this week, I will upload on Saturday and Sunday, and then just roll again right into next week, which means that there's about to be 10 straight days of videos, and then the 2 day break for the weekend. But so we're continuing this process of like 12 days of figures. There's still a few more to draw, and then hopefully that takes us kind of into January is the idea, and then we can start the January anatomy month. So the drawing today is a drawing that I did. I don't want to give away too much, so just sit tight. The full time lapse of the drawing is coming soon. What I did with this drawing is, in the end, I didn't actually really like it. I feel like I lost a little bit of some of the things that I was trying to practice. And so, in the sense that the proportions, while okay, seem a little bit off. The posing is actually not that great, and so the three things that I'm trying to practice with figure drawing are proportions, gesture, and posing. And the gesture of the pose is actually okay. And as I'm doing these figure sketches, what I'm really trying to judge myself on are those three things, and not really try to care too much about if I actually make a good drawing or not. Now, the thing is, with this drawing, I also did kind of lose a little bit of line quality, which actually does affect a little bit the gesture and the posing. So in an interesting way, kind of line quality has like snuck in there as being something that's kind of interesting. But anyway, I don't want to get too far into it. Why don't we jump into the time lapse, and I'm gonna actually do like a voiceover on the time lapse.
So per usual, I'm starting by drawing a circle for the head, and then indicating where the shoulders are. Because this angle is kind of strange, like the way that the pose is, how we're only seeing really like the side section of the body, I actually went ahead and immediately measured out, my 6.5, 7 heads for the height of the figure. And this was just to try and give me like a better idea of like where the waistline will sit as opposed to the shoulder line. This was kind of an interesting figure because of the way that the way that the pose is set up. The distances are kind of strange. So it's hard to believe, but if you were to measure down from her head down to, let's say, where the legs begin, like the bottom of the glutes or the bottom of the butt, it's actually only about 3.5 heads, which is the normal amount, but for some reason it seems like there's way more information in there. I actually recommend, like, if you're trying to find an exercise for understanding a little bit better proportions, this is kind of a nice one to try and measure out and understand. So you can actually see me like struggling with this a little bit. I go back and remeasure the headlines like probably 3 or 4 times until I get something that I'm actually comfortable with. So again, I've kind of laid in the legs, and you can see here that I continue to measure and just keep trying to understand better the proportions and sizes of this pose. I actually wonder now, as I'm kind of doing this voice recording, if there isn't something strange that's happening with the proportions of the figure due to kind of the angle of the camera. I think the camera is actually sitting down and kind of pointing up at the figure, which may be actually creating like kind of a fisheye effect or making the legs seem longer than they actually are in the photo. Either way, it's important to get the measurements right and just keep checking and checking and checking, and either being like as accurate either to the photo as I possibly can, or as accurate to like the, ideal anatomy of the female figure. So at this point, I'm about 10 minutes, 15 minutes into the drawing, and I have a lot of really loose lines sketched in. And this was kind of bothering me a little bit for trying to understand the proportions, so this is where I started to begin to kind of like redefine some of these shapes. And this was helpful for the early stage of the drawing, but unfortunately, if you kind of look at the darkness or thickness of these lines, you can see that it really persisted kind of the whole way through with the figure. So this is where I ran into a little bit of trouble with what I talked about in the introduction about not really understanding so well how to deal with the line quality and the line thickness of this figure. I now go in and sketch in the second leg. I don't really know why I had left that by itself, but here's where I kind of implement one of these like nice measurement techniques that I've talked about before, where since I already have one leg sketched in and I'm kind of happy with the proportions, I can actually just use that leg to measure out the other leg. And this is kind of like a little shortcut that you can use with arms or anything that has like symmetry on the body. It could be eyes, could be, one half of the nose or one half of the mouth. And I was actually kind of happy with how this leg came in so quickly. So this is something kind of interesting about this drawing. You can see I just wrote down that I'm about 28 minutes into the drawing. And I would say this is kind of about, I've been drawing very slowly in this series just to really emphasize these things like proportion and gesture and also the posing. But I'm 28 minutes in and I'm still, if you look, I'm still checking and trying to like redefine the measurements. So something in this drawing kind of got lost with respect to proportions. Even though my measurements seem to be lining up, for some reason the drawing isn't translating correctly. And I'm still not quite sure why that is. If you've watched some of my other videos, I kind of talk about that my process is first putting in the 2D construction, then I go into 3D construction, which in this case is the kind of like the anatomy of the figure. And then after that, I'll look at defining where the shadow shapes are, which is what I'm just starting right now at this moment, around the buttocks and the leg. And then after that, I'll finally start to think about things like adding tone and adding value. In this drawing, and in a lot of the drawings that don't go well, I find myself kind of jumping around a lot, and this is kind of what's creating the problems. So you can see, even though I began to mark this shadow shape, I actually go back in multiple times and kind of readdress 2D construction and 3D construction issues, which is kind of an indication to me, like when I'm doing this in the process, that things aren't going, as smoothly as I would want them to. But again, drawing is this process of kind of pushing and pulling, and you can see here I'm continuing to define and redefine all of the different edges in the body of the figure, which includes the arms and includes the legs a little bit. You can also see I indicated some of the anatomy, but interestingly, in this pose, it's really hard to see any of the anatomy. So the figure isn't, super cut in the sense that there isn't a lot of muscle showing. Like in that position on the side of the rib cage, you would see like the serratus, or maybe pieces of the obliques, or even abs that would be defined. But since this figure, while she's in shape, is not like super cut and these muscles are not well defined, there's actually not much anatomy to pick out, which is also kind of, leaving me a little bit lost relative to some of the other figures that I've drawn recently. And so I'm about to mark down 43 minutes into this drawing, and in total I think it was about 53 minutes. So this is entering the final 10 minutes. And so what I'm really trying to do here is actually just really improve the quality of the drawing. So all the proportions are fixed. A lot of the posing is certainly fixed at this point, but I'm trying to work a little bit on the gesture and just trying to improve, different aspects of how the drawing feels, how it sits in space, if this pose is well communicated, and just in general, just trying to make a better drawing. And I spent about 10 minutes here. Actually, I just want to quickly comment. I made that big sweeping line through the arm. This is one of the ways that I try and kind of recapture the gesture, is actually just like redraw some of these like really large sweeping lines. And you'll see me do that a little bit as I continue to go through the end of this drawing, just to try and like kind of recapture that gesture, recapture this aspect of like a nice drawing. And I think there was actually some effectiveness on the legs here. So when I look back at the legs, irrespective of whether or not they're correctly in proportion to the figure itself or to the photo, which might be distorted, there's actually some nice qualities with respect to the gesture and the posing and the legs. I think that the way that I've used line there and kind of the way that shadow is used gives them some nice structure, some nice dimensionality, and also some decent weight. I think you can really tell like which one is the weight-bearing leg, the straighter leg, and then also there's still that motion of the other leg kind of being lifted up into the air.